Hey guys, you're in for a treat today. I'm about to tell you one of my favorite stories of all time. It's called The Legend of the Arrowhead. Now, my family loves to go hiking. We go to all sorts of different national parks. We go on trails. We go to the mountains. We go to the desert. Doesn't matter where we go, we're always out exploring. And when my kids go out exploring, they like to look for something called an arrowhead. What's an arrowhead? It looks like this. An arrowhead is a piece of rock that has been sharpened with the point. And these were very commonly used amongst the Indians back in the day to hunt and for protection. And they come in so many different colors, shapes, and size. These are just a couple that my kids have found over the years. So today, we're going to talk about where the arrowhead actually comes from and what makes it so cool. So get ready. Okay, guys, by now I'm sure you've all heard of Christopher Columbus, that famous sailor who came over on the Mayflower in 1492 and brought his settlers over, and they started in Providence and made their way down to Plymouth Rock, where they met a tribe of Indians. Now, do any of you guys actually know what tribe of Indians was located in Plymouth Rock? And fun fact, they had been there for 10,000 years before the settlers have ever got there. Do you know? Probably not, because I hadn't heard about them. The Wampanoag tribe. Now, this tribe of Indians, they were really nice. They were really good with the land. They were known for weaving baskets, and they just lived a very peaceful life. And then the settlers came. All right. And the settlers started moving onto their land. And for the first little bit, the Indians and the settlers, they lived in peace and harmony. And actually, the Indians were the ones who saved the settlers the first couple years that they were there from starvation and from the freeze. And so for a while, they had this really good relationship with one another. They worked together, hence where we hear of the first Thanksgiving. However, after many years, and new leadership came in, the settlers started to try to take over the Indians' land, and they pushed them away. Well, at this time, the Indians were having issues or problems with how the settlers were living, and the settlers were having issues with the Indians not listening to them, so conflict began. And that's where all this starts. The legend of the Arrowhead came at a time with a lot of uprising and a lot of tension and a lot of fighting between the Indians and the settlers. But this story is actually really interesting, and it will make you think. So sit back, because this is where the legend of the Arrowhead actually starts. Okay, guys, I really love this story, the legend of the Arrowhead. All right, so I told you about the Indians. I told you about the settlers. I told you that there was conflict between them, all right? So the settlers came up to the Wampanoag tribe and told them, we're going to give you 3 days, and we want you off this land. And the Indians were thinking, 3 days? We've been here for 10,000 years. Who do you think you are? So when the settlers came to them and told them they had 3 days, many people had a hard time with this because they had lived on this land for over 10,000 years. This is where their families were born, and the family before them, and the family before them. This is all that they knew. So they were thinking to themselves, why do I have to leave? I've been here forever. But the settlers stuck their ground. They said, you have 3 days to leave, and if you don't leave peacefully, we will make you leave. Well, this scared many Indians away. So many, probably 2,000 Indians left because they did not want conflict. However, there was a group of Indians that decided no one was going to push them off their land. So in this area, it was broken up into different tribes, okay? So there were 10 tribes in this area, and each tribe had a chief and a healer, basically like the head of the tribe, all right? And everything went through him. Well, these chiefs came together and said, we're not going to leave. We're going to stand our ground. We're going to get our people away, but we're going to stay here, and we're going to try to fight back for our land. So they got their families together and the close members of their tribe, and in the middle of the night, before that third night, they sent them off. They said, you've got to leave. Go. Keep on wandering. Keep on walking. You'll find shelter, maybe another tribe, but just go, okay? So they sent them away. Well, that third day comes around, and the soldiers come stomping over, and they're ready to make everybody leave when they see that the camp is empty. All right? Well, do you think this makes them upset? Yeah, it does. They were ready to take all these people and take them on this journey, and yet they have no one to take with them because people have evacuated or they've gone in hiding. And so these soldiers, these settlers get together and they go out on this massive hunt, all right? And they're going to find these Indians who have abandoned what they're supposed to be doing, and they're going to wrangle them in, and they're going to take them to a new location, just like they said they would. So they set out, and they're scouring this whole area. They're looking high-low. They're looking in trees. They're looking in ditches. They have this huge amount of space that they are patrolling. But guess what? They don't find anybody. That's because these Indians knew this land way better than they did. And they knew that buried throughout this area were caves, all right? And there was one cave in particular that unless you knew it was there, there's no way you could see it because it was hid behind rocks. So those 10 war chiefs, Indian chiefs, decide they're going to pack up all their stuff one night and they leave when all their soldiers are asleep, and they go and they're going to stay in that cave and they're going to buy out and weigh out their time. All right. So they make their way to that cave and they know better. They can't go out during the day and they can't make a fire because if they do, the soldiers are going to see the smoke. So they hunker down. They bring everything they can. And when night falls, that's when they go out in groups of 2 and they go and they send hunting parties out there and they go and they bring food back. And you've got someone who's hunting, someone who's skinning the animal, someone who's in charge of finding clean water. And so they have their jobs and they do this for weeks, hoping that the more time that goes by, eventually the soldiers and the settlers will just move on. And so a couple weeks goes by and they start running really low on food and water. And the area is kind of clean at this point, to the point they're going to have to venture out a little bit further. All right. So one night, 3 weeks in, a group of 2 Indians decide they're going to go out and they're going to look for new food. So they go out and they go out and they go out and they're searching and they're searching. And these Indians are known for being super quiet. They know how to walk throughout the land without disturbing anything. So they're walking, and all of a sudden they hear a stick crack and they freeze. They look down. They know it wasn't them that stepped on a stick. So they're standing there and they turn around and they don't see anything, but they knew that they heard something. So they freeze a little bit longer. And eventually they start walking again. And pretty soon they come up to this lake, okay? And it's more like a pond. It's not a big body of water. It's smaller and it's surrounded by trees. So they're going to the edge to fill up their cantina, their cartons of water to take back to the cave, when all of a sudden they hear something again. And they look up and they look across the lake. And what do you think they see? There's one soldier staring them straight in the eyes. And they freeze. And the soldier freezes, and eventually, very, 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 very unexpected, the soldier turns and walks away. And these Indians are flabbergasted. They're so confused. He had his opportunity to let people know that we were here, but he didn't. Why? So they get as much water as they can, and they run back to the cave, and they relay the story on. All right. Well, everyone decides we're not going out the rest of the night. We're going to be super cautious because we can't risk anything. He probably went back to the camp with all of his comrades and he's telling them exactly where our location is and what's going on. All right. So they don't leave. But the next night they have to leave. All right. Because they need provisions to help keep them alive. All right. So they send 2 more parties out of 2 people each. And they walk out and they're searching around. And all of a sudden they come into this clearing and they're shocked. They see 4 soldiers who were laying on the ground bleeding. And the closer they get, they realize that these soldiers have been attacked by a bear. All right. They have slash marks through their stomach. Things are coming out. They're still barely alive, but there's not much time or they're going to die. So what do you think the Indians do? Do you think they leave them? Most people probably would, saying, hey, they're going to turn us in. We're just going to go and look out for ourselves. But that's not what they do. They actually drag these 4 soldiers back with them to their cave, and they take care of them. They clean out their wounds. They stop the bleeding. They give them water. And eventually the soldiers survive and they're okay. And so the next day they all decide that they've got to go out together and check and see what's going on because they can't stay in a cave forever. So it's still dark at this time and they're packing up all their things because once they leave this cave, they're not going to come back. So they're grabbing all their stuff. It's still dark. The sun is gradually coming out when all of a sudden the cave lights up. It gets super bright and they're all looking like, what's going on right now? When all of a sudden out walks this Indian chief they have never seen before. And he's glowing. All right. And he holds one thing in his hand and it's what looks like an arrowhead. And he looks at each of the chiefs in their eye and he says, if you follow the arrows, you can save them. And they're all like, excuse me, what did you say? And he looks at them one more time and he says, if you follow the arrows, you can save them. And then before they can even blink their eyes, he's gone. So once the Indian disappeared, the only thing laying in the middle of the cave was that arrowhead. All right. And so one of the Indian chiefs picks up the arrowhead in his hand, and the minute he touches that arrowhead, he feels compelled. He feels this pull that he needs to leave the cave, and he knows where to go. He knows that if he walks out of the cave, he's going to go north, he's going to take a right, and he's going to follow this trail. And so he's telling the guys, I don't know why, but you need to follow me, and we need to leave now. So they all grab their stuff, and they exit the cave. The minute they exit the cave, this sight in front of them shocks them. They didn't think they could be shocked even more, but they are, because lining a path are different arrowheads lit up. All right. So basically there are hundreds of arrowheads lining this path, showing them the direction that they need to go. And as they walk by an arrowhead, it lights up and then it gets dull, and they take it with them and they keep walking and they find more and they pick it up. And pretty soon they follow this trail for what seems like hours, and they come across a camp. And in that camp, it is dark, but they see soldiers, and the soldiers are lining around this circle. What do you think's in the middle of that circle? It's a cage. It's a cage made out of big sticks, and it's got about 50 of the tribesmen, family, and friends locked inside this cage. And all around this cage are soldiers standing there looking at them, yelling at them, throwing food at them, being mean to them. Well, they know that if they show themselves right now, these chiefs, that they're going to blow the cover. They won't be able to help their friends. So they sit back and they wait, and they wait, and they wait. All right. And pretty soon these soldiers fall asleep. All right. Well, each of the chiefs looks down, and right in front of them is a different arrowhead that is glowing. And no one knows why, but each of the chiefs decided to take their chance and reaches down and grabs that arrowhead. And guess what? The minute they grab that arrowhead, something changes. They feel stronger. They feel faster. They feel like they can jump bigger, that they're stronger than ever, that they can make anything happen. They feel like this arrowhead put something into their body that's making them do things that they normally couldn't do. So within seconds, they look at each other and they know what they have to do. They have to break apart this cage, and they have to do it so quickly and so soundlessly that they can't wake up the soldiers. So as a unit, they grab their arrowheads and they go into action. And probably within about 10 seconds, they have gotten to the cage, broken the cage open. Somehow they have gotten all 50 of their family and fellow tribe members out, and they have left camp. The minute that they free everybody from their tribe, all their friends and family, they vanish, and then they go. So the next morning comes around, and the soldiers wake up and they're groggy, and they're wiping their eyes, and they're getting ready to jeer and throw things at their prisoners again, when all of a sudden they see that their cage is now broken into a million pieces, and no one is there. The only thing sitting there in the middle of camp is that circle, and in the middle of it is an arrowhead sitting right there pointed. Well, the soldiers were stunned, but there's nothing that they can do. In the meantime, those 10 chiefs decided that they needed to go save other people. They were fortunate enough to get their family and friends out. It was time for them to repay the favor. And magically, mysteriously, no one knows why, but the minute they left that camp, more arrowheads showed up, each glowing, showing a path, showing a direction. So they would go camp to camp, following these arrowheads and saving people. By the time that they were done and weeks had gone by, they had saved over 500 people and had collected over 500 different arrowheads. Now, I told you before, I like to travel. I like to go hike. And I was actually in Arizona, and I was on one of my hikes, and I came up to a trailhead, and it said the Arrow Trail. And they had like a little story about the arrow trail. And it said that long ago, people claimed that they found arrowheads along the trail, and that when they touched these arrowheads, they felt rejuvenated. They feel like they had more energy. Even if they've been hiking for 10 miles, they feel like they were just starting their hike up, that it made them feel energized and rested and better than ever. And so I was on this path, and I came across an arrowhead, and I picked it up, okay? I know. I think I knew exactly what to look for because we had searched for arrowheads for so long. So I picked up this arrowhead, and they're right. The minute I picked this up, I don't know, maybe I was playing with my head, but I felt like I could hike another 10 miles. I feel like I could kept on going. I felt great, and I took this home with me. The minute I left Arizona, I no longer feel that whenever I grab this. However, that story really intrigued me, so I started doing a little bit more research. And I was looking into the Legend of the Arrowhead a little bit more. And remember how I told you that those 10 chiefs went around camp to camp to camp, and they ended up saving over 500 people? Well, along the way, for each person that they saved, there ended up being an arrowhead. And it is said that those 10 chiefs have now spread these arrowheads and distributed them all over the United States. They're in all different national parks, state parks, open areas, the great outdoors. And so it said that if you come upon one of these arrowheads and you pick it up, you're able to see a flashback to what happened, and you have revived strength. Okay. It also said that on April 14th, which is the anniversary of when the whole Legend of the Arrowhead came about, that on that night, those arrowheads that have not been found light up. The sky gets slightly green, and if you go outside and you see a green sky, there must be an arrowhead near. And that arrowhead, if you look hard enough, is lit up in the soil and in the sand. And if you see one, you grab it, all right? And if you feel anything, maybe like energy or power or happiness, when you grab that, it means that you're pure of heart and the Indian deems you worthy of owning this arrowhead, all right? So I challenge you guys, arrowheads are everywhere. They're not just in Arizona, they're not just in Texas, they're not just in Colorado, they're everywhere. So I challenge you, next time you go out to explore, open your eyes and see if you can find one. Like I told you before, they come in so many different shapes and sizes. All right? And there's a lot of history behind these. So we like to collect these because it helps us remember about the Indians of our past and about exploring and getting out there and trying new things. So good luck in your arrowhead hunting.